You've done this book, The Poverty Safari. What drove you to write it? How would you sum up what it is?
A lot of culture, news often leaves people scratching their heads because the reality with which they're being presented is so jarringly disfigured from their own experience. What I wanted to do was write a book that people from those backgrounds would read and see themselves accurately reflected in. The experience of living in poverty is so chronically stressful that it can impact everything from fetal development to how a person interprets threats, assesses risk, right on to antisocial behaviour, low educational attainment, coming into contact with law enforcement, and ultimately by understanding how the physiological experience of poverty, then you begin to have a more accurate profile of some of the pockets of society that have become disengaged or have become hostile.
There's a mass amount of research which shows a very strong link between mental distress and deprivation and inequality in society. You're far more likely to have depression and anxiety, and obviously with depression and anxiety you get self-medication, addictions, abuse, alcohol, drugs, food, etc. Do you want to talk about that mental distress, the damage inflicted upon people and your own experiences, and how we have that nuanced take about it?
Absolutely. Obviously when we talk about personal responsibility, it's quite a loaded term. So understandably on the left it's regarded as a kind of Trojan horse for cuts to public services and for example, a welfare system which currently is so hostile. It's using humiliation as a sort of motivation to get into work. So my argument is that the people who have created that system misunderstand how people at the lower end of the income scale actually interpret things. Using my own life as an example, and my experience is not unique and is actually too common.
I mean, when you were 5 years old, your mum took a knife to your throat in a drunken rage.
That story really begins with my mother's experience as a child growing up in a difficult community, in a difficult home. She was subject to violence of all sorts, including sexual violence, and ultimately her inability to process that trauma and manage the stress obviously manifests later as her inability to cope with having children. When adverse events happen, which they happen to middle class families, upper class families, we all have to deal with adversity. And a family that has experienced trauma sometimes doesn't have the capacity to nurture and support itself when adversity strikes. We compartmentalise these problems naturally because we have a system that has to deal with things separately, but actually there's a lot of overlap. If we were to think about homeless people, some people in prison, people with drug addictions problems, people who can't hold down work, you can usually walk back their difficulties to a point in their own childhood where they became chronically stressed and insecure and fearful. If we were to think about them not only as adults with choices that need to take responsibility, but also formerly children growing up in really hostile circumstances, then this would help us to sort of modulate the discussion around reconciling the need for public services with self-efficacy and personal responsibility.
Scottish independence, when the referendum was called, support was on about 20%.
Thought I was getting an easy time here, and now you...
It's got to happen, we can't not talk about it. It started on 28% and it ended up, what, 45%, was it? This was not blood and soil, Braveheart nationalism. This was, for many people, about breaking with an unjust order and building a new society. What role did class play in all of that?
Well, what I realised in hindsight was that the Yes movement was a broad church, as they say. I made an assumption that the part of the Yes movement that I interfaced with and engaged with was the whole Yes movement. After the result, without that kind of collective goal in mind, then we started kind of like picking each other apart a little bit. A lot of the people who wave the flags and a lot of the people who are quite easy to kind of joke about for some, a lot of those people were the people who weren't interested in politics before, who became activised by something that spoke to them. But I'm a Yes voter and I believe in Scottish independence, and I believe in Scottish independence even if it means a big deficit, even if it means taking a hit, because I think having control of everything from immigration to our taxes and our ability to form our own, we can form our own relationships abroad and stuff like that, but you know, the scope is just not there.
Lots of working class communities in England and Wales voted for Brexit, often quite decisively. That didn't happen in Scotland. Why?
The turnout was low and it's business as usual in Scotland again in terms of who's politically active. I voted Remain, but as much as I voted Remain, I felt a lot of solidarity and connection with the communities that voted Brexit. Sometimes political behaviour in working class communities is about striking back against the people that you feel excluded by. That's how sometimes you could get people arguably maybe voting against their own interests in certain issues. I mean, I know I certainly have.
In the general election, you actually voted for Labour. Why did you vote for the Labour Party as somebody who is a yeser? And also, if a viable socialist government under Jeremy Corbyn came to power, would you still support independence in that circumstance?
That's something that I'm still considering. I withdrew my support for the SNP quite vocally in 2015, and that was just because they had reneged on a couple of pledges that had drawn me to them in the first place. You know, I stand by that because I was trying to send them a signal. As a voter, that's the only way really that I can let them know. Like, I'm not happy with the direction that you're taking. What I see Corbyn as almost as a sort of interruption to regularly scheduled programming. Yeah. I can't say that I'm not going to be pro-Indie even if Corbyn gets in, because he'll have to move further to the centre. I like the way that he is with media. He doesn't play the game. I'm a bit of a kind of troublemaking artist as well. So there's a part of me that's just kind of sitting back, rubbing my hands, going, I wonder what's going to happen here, which I guess is maybe not politically responsible, but that's my nature, so I enjoy watching it.